All right, so now we have gone up through our bony fishes, and so we are going to continue up into our next group, which is amphibia. So class amphibia. So these should really start looking quite familiar to everybody. Class amphibia includes frogs, salamanders, toads, and caecilians. The only one of those you may have not heard of is a caecilian. A caecilian is an amphibian, but it just kind of looks like, this is a caecilian down here at the bottom right. It just kind of looks like a worm, but it is actually a legless amphibian. So they are terrestrial tetrapods, for the most part, that are dependent on water for breeding. So they do have to lay their eggs in water for reproduction. They are ectothermic. Ecto meaning outside, thermic referring to temperature. And what this means is that they regulate their body temperatures based off the environment. This is what some people would call incorrectly, never say this, and you can correct people if you hear them say this, is that they are cold-blooded. Being cold-blooded is not a thing. Being ectothermic means if it's warm outside, they are warm outside. They are warm. If it's cold outside, they are cold. So that's what ectothermy is, body temperature regulation by the environment. They can breathe with permeable skin. They have very thin mucus-covered skin. They don't have scales. And some salamanders even are lungless. So while they do still have lungs, not all amphibians have lungs, and they rely solely on breathing through their skin. Their veins and capillaries are extremely close to the surface of their skin, and so oxygen can pass directly from the environment into their bloodstream. Some of these organisms are going to be brightly colored, like this poison dart frog up here. And these are the critters that you would never ever want to lick, because if you lick them, you will die. They are poisonous, highly poisonous. So the more brightly colored, more brightly colored amphibians are, probably the more toxic they are going to be. And these guys do exhibit a metamorphic life cycle. So they're laid as eggs in the water. They are reliant on water. These eggs are going to hatch into tadpoles, and those tadpoles are going to metamorphose into the adult stage. So here's a cool GIF of metamorphosis happening, a tadpole into a frog. I'm just going to let that play through because it's pretty freaking neat. So you can see it's a pretty dramatic transformation to become from a tadpole to an adult. Okay. So here are some pictures of amphibians that I have personally gotten to work with. I've worked with a lot of different amphibians. I started off in a behavioral ecology lab studying salamanders. So these were the salamanders I personally studied. These are ringed salamanders. I went to Panama to study these fellas. These are tropical arboreal, so they live in trees, salamanders. And then I got to see all sorts of cool different specimens. So these are glass frogs. Both of these guys are glass frogs found in Panama. This is a spotted salamander. And then this is a newt. So newts are just another type of salamander. All right. So we have gone up our branch for amphibia, and we are going to continue up our next evolutionary branch to reptilia. So the class Reptilia, this includes snakes, turtles, lizards, and dinosaurs. This is the first class that is independent from water. They have internal fertilization, so the sperm is going to be inside of the female where the eggs will become fertilized. They have a watertight amniotic egg. This is extremely important for becoming independent from water, the amniotic egg. So it's going to have a harder shell, and having that harder shell is going to allow them to remain wet inside and also prevent them from drying out. They have eyelids, so eyelids allowing them to blink and keep their eyes moist. They have watertight keratinized skin, so nice scaly skin. And then they have scales, also allowing them to maintain their own moisture balance. They are also ectothermic, so that means they are regulating their body temperature through the environment. If it's warm, they are warm. If it's cold, they are cold. And this helps them conserve energy. This means that they're only going to be active when the temperature is right. If it's cold outside, they're going to slow way down and conserve that energy. We have all sorts of really interesting displays of communication. Territorial displays, mating displays, all sorts of different ways for these organisms to communicate. So here I have a GIF of an anole. This anole is a male, and he is doing a territorial display while also trying to attract a female. So he's letting out that piece of skin underneath his chin. This is called a dewlap. That dewlap is a way to tell other males, look at me, I'm big and bad, and I've got this bright red dewlap, don't mess with me. And to the ladies, it's saying, look at my dewlap, it's so red, I'm so healthy, you should come be my mate. All right, so check out this diagram. What a great diagram. Don't you just really want to study this diagram? I really think you should. So this is the diagram of the amniotic egg. So the amniotic egg, again, it was a huge adaptation to being on dry land. It's watertight. It is the result of internal fertilization and some other modes of adaptation onto land that I've already discussed: eyelids, keratinized skin, and a very efficient pair of kidneys. Now for our amniotic egg, there's 6 main things that I want you to note for our amniotic egg. First is the yolk. The yolk is going to provide nutrients to the developing embryo. So our yolk, here is labeled yolk sac, is going to be this right here, feeding directly into the stomach of our developing embryo. Next, we have the amnion. The amnion encases the embryo. So here's the amnion here in blue, the amnion. Next, we have the allantois. The allantois is going to collect the waste from our developing embryo. So the allantois here. Next, we have the albumin. So that might sound familiar if you took Bio 100. We actually used albumin from egg whites as a protein experiment. The albumin of an egg is if you're thinking about a chicken egg, it's the egg white. That is albumin. And this is going to absorb shock. So if that egg experiences some kind of trauma, then the albumin is going to absorb any kind of shock and help protect the egg. So the albumin is here, all the way around. So this is again, if you're thinking about a chicken egg, it's the egg white. Next we have the chorion. Chorion, this is for gas exchange, so allowing the embryo to still get oxygen. So here we have it. Here, going all the way around. Then we have the amniotic fluid. This keeps the developing embryo moist, so it's keeping it nice and wet. So the amniotic fluid, so the amniotic cavity with amniotic fluid inside here. Okay, again, remember this diagram and remember these descriptions. Okay, so now that we've covered reptilia, we are going to go off on a sub-branch here because birds are extremely closely related to our reptiles. So the class Aves, birds. So here I have some videos of just some birds that I've gotten to work with. That video there is of a kestrel that I used to work with. His name is Finley. So Finley is a male kestrel, and what I was kind of showing there is how he is a falcon, and falcons are aerial predators, and they're kind of like the jet pilots of the sky, and so they can hone in on prey and keep their head perfectly still while they're chasing their prey. So that's what I'm doing there. I'm kind of showing how Finley can keep his head still, and he can do that while flying, chasing things like grasshoppers and small birds. Next I have a video. This is a Harris's hawk. His name's Kieran. And this is just to show him flying up.
Good
there
boy.
He is. Yeah, so I've gotten to work with some pretty cool birds as well. All right, so the class Aves, they are homeothermic. They can maintain a constant body temperature. So this makes them very similar to mammals in that we can both maintain our body temperatures. They have high metabolisms, And because they have high metabolisms, they can generate their own body heat. They do have true flight. They are one of only a few, two groups of vertebrates that have true flight, birds and bats. And they are the only living animals with feathers. And only birds, insects, and bats are capable of true flight. Another characteristic they have is, I put quotes around this, quote, hollow bones. They don't truly have hollow bones, but their bones are, instead of being very dense, they're more of a very air pocket filled lattice work type of structure that makes them pretty lightweight, and that helps them with flight. They have extremely acute hearing and vision. Like you saw with Finley being able to keep his head straight, his vision is also 50 times greater than our own human vision. So very acute vision. They have all sorts of different types of beaks and beak shapes. This is going to exemplify specific types of diet. Whenever Darwin was studying the finches on the Galapagos Islands, it was actually the finches on the islands that helped lead him to the theory of evolution through natural selection. So beaks can determine different types of, beaks can be indicators of different types of diets. So here I have this diagram. So fruit eaters have big, thick bills. We have insect eaters with thinner bills. So all sorts of different types of beaks and beak shapes. Birds exhibit extensive amounts of parental care. They take care of their young. They take care of their eggs until they hatch. Then they feed their young. And they will take care of them sometimes up to a full year or more. So depending on the species, some birds require a lot of parental care. So birds exhibit a lot of complex social behaviors. There are entire courses dedicated to nothing but the study of birds. It's called ornithology. So if you ever have a chance to take an ornithology class, I highly recommend it. Birds are some of the most fascinating vertebrates, in my opinion, on the planet. They have extremely heightened intelligence. Birds are incredibly, incredibly smart. They can be active predators searching for prey. They can solve complex puzzles. If anyone, and again, maybe I'm just a weirdo and I have odd hobbies, but if you've ever just watched crows or ravens, you will see that they can solve very complex puzzles, and they will also help out their friends, quote unquote friends. So incredibly intelligent animals. All right, so here is, so this is just a little bit more of like how flight evolved and what helps flight. So again, kind of going into that quote unquote hollow bone idea, you can see that inside the bone of a bird, it's not hollow, but it's filled with very large air pockets. Again, this makes them very light to help with flight. So the quote unquote hollow bones, feathers, very strong chest muscles, and then they have a very efficient vascular system. This is because they have a 4-chambered heart. A lot of organisms that we've been talking about don't have a 4-chambered heart. Birds, crocodiles, and humans all have 4-chambered hearts. Everything else has 2 or 3-chambered hearts. They also have an extremely efficient respiratory system. To put it in a very short way, more or less, birds are capable of inhaling and exhaling practically at the same time. So here's some more on how birds evolved, or how birds evolved in general. So they did evolve from dinosaurs, so they're very closely related to reptiles. They evolved, or at least diversified during the Jurassic, about 245 million years ago. There are lots of examples of feathered dinosaurs. One of the most popular and most famous is the Archaeopteryx. There's an entire clothing line named after the Archaeopteryx. So they evolved a very long time ago, and more evidence is popping up that dinosaurs were feathered. A lot of that research being done by the Royal Saskatchewan Museum, right here in Regina. All right, so we've gone up the class Aves, and now we are going to get into the last class, Mammalia. So this is my personal favorite, but my opinion is extremely biased because I am a mammalogist. I study mammals. Mammals are extremely morphologically diverse, and this means they come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. You have mammals that are the size of your thumb, but then you also have the blue whale, which is the largest animal in the world. So lots of diversity when it comes to sizes. And when it comes to shapes, you have all sorts of different shapes as well. Mammals have dominated every type of ecosystem there is practically. You find them in deserts, you find them in rainforests, you find them in the trees, you find them in the ground, you find them in the ocean, you find them in lakes. They are everywhere, incredibly adaptive and diverse. However, there's not many of them. There's only about 4,400 different species of mammals, so there's not that many, but there's a lot of diversification. They are endothermic, so endo, within, thermi for temperature. So again, high metabolism and can maintain or self-regulate their body temperature. Mammals have fur or hair. There is a difference between those two. Fur will grow to a certain length and stop growing. Hair continues to grow. So if you want to think about yourself, the hair that you have on your arms, that's actually fur. The hair you have on your head that keeps growing, that is truly hair. And it's just a form of modified scales, and it helps maintain that internal temperature. We also have highly insulating adipose tissue. This is called brown adipose tissue, and it helps maintain our body temperatures. And if we ever get really cold, it helps with non-shivering thermogenesis, which means it can produce its own heat very quickly and help rise body temperatures. Mammals, of course, have mammary glands. This is where we get the name mammal. Mammary glands produce milk, so we can feed our offspring and exhibit extensive parental care. We have extremely efficient circulatory systems with that 4-chambered heart, so we can move our blood around our bodies and our oxygen around our bodies extremely fast and efficiently. Varied dentation. Now, varied dentation means there's a lot of different types of tooth forms, lots of different types of teeth. This means we can take advantage of all sorts of different diets. You have carnivores, herbivores, and omnivores, each one specializing on a different type of diet. Mammals have extremely large brains, which means increased intelligence. And with mammals, we see a high degree of sociality. Sociality has often been associated with being more intelligent, and having a high amount of parental care is also associated with being highly intelligent. And mammals exhibit both of those things. So how did mammals evolve then? So a common amniote ancestor was shared by modern reptiles, birds, and mammals. Mammal-like reptiles evolved alongside the dinosaurs, so this weird fella down here. So evolved alongside the dinosaurs from this amniote ancestor, and it gradually added more and more mammalian traits: hair, endothermy, mammary glands, and whenever there was the massive extinction because of the asteroid hitting the Earth, the mammals were burrowers, and they were able to hide and go into a very depressed metabolic state. Because they have that brown adipose tissue, they were capable of doing this, and they were able to go into this state called torpor, which is just a lower metabolic rate state, and they were able to survive that mass extinction. So natural selection may have favored these traits, which adapted the animals to nocturnal life, possibly as a way to avoid predators. And there's recently discovered fossils from China of the earliest mammals. They're shrew-like, about 160 million years old. So again, that's this guy down here. All right, so we just finished up this last branch of Mammalia. So there's 3 different types of mammals, and I definitely want you to know these 3 different lineages of mammals. First, we have monotremes. These are the most basal type of mammals, and we know this because they still lay eggs. They are egg-laying mammals. This includes things like the platypus, so an Australian monotreme. Another one is the echidna, again, only found in Australia. They also lack nipples, however, they do still have mammary glands. These milk glands are found on the belly, and rather than having a nipple, they just excrete milk from the skin, and the offspring will just lick it up off of the skin. Next, we have marsupials. Marsupials have a very short gestation time. This means they don't develop inside of the womb for very long. The mothers will give live birth to something that's practically like a fetus. And this small fetus will then crawl out and crawl into the pouch of the mother. So all marsupials have a pouch. These are things like kangaroos, koalas, wallabies, etc. They will crawl into the pouch and then latch onto the nipple of the mom. Finally, we have the placental mammals. The placental mammals have the longest gestation time, so they will fully develop inside of the womb of the mother, and the young are going to be nourished in the placenta with the mother's blood. So this is what human beings are. Human beings and all other mammals, so dogs, cats, giraffes, lions, tigers, bears, everything else, is a placental mammal. So this is just to kind of give an overview of the amount of diversity for each type of mammal. So all of these are placental mammals up on the top. So you can see placental mammals are definitely dominant. There's about 319 different species of marsupial and only 5 species of monotremes, or our egg-laying mammals. So again, I am a mammalogist, and I have gotten to work with all sorts of amazing different types of mammals. My specialty is bats, so I've gotten to work with all sorts of different amazing types of bats. I've also gotten to work with some of the coolest rodents that are out there, including kangaroo rats. This is called a pygmy mouse. They are one of the smallest types of rodents. And I've also gotten to work with things like tigers and lions and other big cats. So there's all sorts of opportunities out there for you to participate in. All right, and that wraps up our section on animal diversity, and we will be picking up on animal nutrition here for our last section.